Blog Talk Radio. Oh, it's another episode of Daring to Be Different, Dream Chasers Radio with your host, Yaya Diamond. It is such a wonderful thing to be back in town and back on the radio. I'll be back out of town soon again, but let me tell you something. To be back home and be on the radio is a beautiful thing. I love it. And we have our guest here. We have him before on the show, and we're having him back. Of course, if you're a repeat person here on the show, we're showing our love to the people out there and letting people know that there's just more to one person than you think it is. And James is also the executive director of APCA. James, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you.
Hey. Well, I want to go over this with you because you have another business, but this one here is SiliconEdge, and it's the Asia Pacific Coaching Alliance. Can you tell us what that is exactly?
Yeah, actually, there's two pieces. So SiliconEdge is the corporate training, so it specializes in like global leadership development, high-impact skills, executive coaching. APCA is Asia Pacific Coaching Alliance, so that's a nonprofit which helps to increase skills and business development opportunities for coaches in the Asia Pacific region.
Wow. And okay, so you've developed this company, and let me ask you a question. What is this company exactly? What is SiliconEdge?
Yeah. So a lot of people hear that they think immediately, it might be something like semiconductors, but the purpose of this goes way back to 2007. Was previously, now I'm primarily located in Tokyo, Japan, but I had lived and worked in the Valley for about 11 years. When you look back to the .com kind of bubble or the launch of those internet services, there was more of a physical edge to the Silicon Valley, right? A lot of these things were focused only in the Valley. And then over time, over the last probably 15 years or so, we've seen that physical edge move, right? Because innovation's everywhere. It's a natural part of humanity. So it moved throughout the U.S., it's in Austin, New York, Atlanta, anywhere, but also throughout the region. But what I learned in a lot of the startups I was at, working in consulting, is that I thought there was a psychological edge or a psychological shift, almost an evolutionary step of thinking. And that was really recognizing or trying to optimize the human element, right? Not just the technology, because most of these firms we see are not technical anymore. Airbnb, Uber, they use technology, but in many ways, Walmart will have deeper technology than they do. So that's kind of a misnomer, and it's really focusing on this idea of what can people do. And one quick example would be, we look at Steve Jobs as an amazing business person, perhaps developing the iPhone or the iPod. But really the answer is, what happened to all the incumbents like Nokia? How did they not develop the iPhone? That's really the other piece. It's not that they didn't have good people, right? But the issue is, how do they deploy the people? How do you engage them? So this is really the human element, which I think is really the edge going forward. Technology is ubiquitous and pretty easy for us to access now, but it's this mental piece, right? How do we improve people's lives and the organization? And that's really what SiliconEdge is focused on, is that aspect, the what we say, like innovate, communicate, transform. So these come from the human element. Right.
Wow, that is amazing. I know you to be a very proficient business person. You're really focused on your goals, and I commend you for that, because that's very hard, and some people have a hard time doing that. So with that in mind, you have a global vision?
Yeah, so I think a couple things. One is Asia really attracted me. I've been here almost 10 years now. One, because so many things have been moving overseas for a lot of reasons, but all cultures and things go through different evolutions. We look at a lot of the pollution problems in China, but we forget. I know even in Japan, they had just maybe not as bad, but pretty horrendous smog problem back in the actually all the way up to probably the 80s. The U.S. I grew up right in Southern California. Los Angeles had a smog problem for a long time too. So Pittsburgh, right? These things happen. So I saw this as a very dynamic thing. There's a lot of value add and there's a lot of differences. But also for a lot of the things that we wanted to do, you kind of have to step outside the paradigm or what I would say the box of things, right? Because there's a thing. And in some ways when you come into Asia, because there's, I wouldn't say problems, but challenges, people are more likely to look at something new initially than you might have when things are already working good enough, right? If it's working good enough, why touch it? It's usually someone that got to kind of make something happen that will look for those newer pieces. So that's where we kind of established initially as well. So that's been quite good. And I'd say the other thing is, the industry itself, and it's not a good or bad thing, it's quite an opportunity. Within the, like human resources, the talent management, the coaching, training, a lot of these were based more on the traditional educational model that takes, months or years of learning and not really, return on investment focus. So everything that we did was based on really a clean sheet of paper design, which is how do you give someone the most, effective and perhaps, what's the term there? Effective and practical or actionable information as quick as possible. Right, businesses can't send someone away for a year or two. Right, we need something that will work and be useful immediately. So that was kind of the thing as well, recognizing a lot of these shifts after that 2008 kind of Great Recession. That was another inflection point, both in I think the global economy, but also in the corporate culture and structure of organizations and cultures around the world. So we're kind of still feeling that now.
We definitely are. And your focus on the goal that you're doing with your company, I was reading up on it, and I thought that was one aspect of it that was very important as a mother, as a parent, as any parent would want the best for their child. I was looking at your Lego. It says Lego Life Lessons for Kids on your website. Yeah. I thought that was amazing. So what is that about? I mean, actually, how do you help a child to grasp the concept of and the importance of social skills and fine motor skills?
Sure. Yeah, I think actually, the Lego concept is something that actually SiliconEdge was predicated on. And as I was going through this, we developed, this goes way back to 1994 actually, but this idea of what we call psychological Jujutsu. I was watching the UFC when it was a fledgling sport. And I remember watching the Hoist Gracie out there. He wasn't, a very intimidating guy, not very muscle bound or anything, but he held his own and won. And I was thinking, what if you could do the same thing for the mind? So all of this then began to boil down, and I thought, what if you could make these components almost into, I've always loved Legos, into like a Lego brick where, we call them learning blocks. You could snap them together, right? There's a lot to learn. So the idea with this Lego Life for Kids is, in fact, I have a kid, he's, 18-month-old child, but we use a little bit bigger Duplo blocks. But the issue is, you have the issue of creativity and innovation of how things are put together, right? There's shapes and sizes, developing motor skills. But beyond that, there's a lot of life lessons that can be taught that way. So, as he's building, I begin to show him things that are related to, what we'd say the adult world. I wouldn't say the real world, but what we face, right? So if he's building, there's things where he might need to negotiate to get blocks, trading me, right? There's a give and a take. Or maybe he wants to help build my piece and these types of things. So I try to, use these types of social things that we all need, because at the end, what I think what really makes life enjoyable is, and I've kind of boiled these down from years of training, there's a communication aspect, there's negotiating, there's influencing, and there's persuasion with some amount of, I don't want to say aggressiveness, but let's say assertiveness, right? That we all have our own needs that should be taken care of and can work out with others. But I think by understanding that everything we do is a negotiation, right? Whether it's with our spouse or children, it doesn't mean that there's a loser. but we're always
Right.
trying to, there's compromises, right? So how does that work? And I think, that instilling that in children, but doing it through lessons and osmosis will serve them all the way through adulthood without being anything painful where you kind of come out of high school and you're hit with the real world. So that's one of the things I've tried to do from the beginning.
I think that's very important because, to teach a child to apply these things early on is great, because then when they get older, it won't be so hard for them
Yes.
to do, you know what I mean, to accomplish their goals, to have goal setting, and also to become more productive, a more productive person in the business sense,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's great. Thank you so much for doing that.
Well, thank you.
Now, SiliconEdge, how does somebody use your company? I mean, exactly why would they come to you?
Yeah, so it usually comes from two main pieces. Either, employees. This is usually sold on the corporate side. So usually either employees of the company will come to us, or you'll get either a particular manager, right, who has some needs, or there might be, in some companies there's a learning and development officer, or even human resources. It depends on those. But one of those two groups will come, either the corporate managerial side or the individual that has needs for specific training. So oftentimes if it's the individual, they're looking for more of the hands-on coaching, right? So in that case, we call this a high-impact or results-driven coaching, which is specifically helping them to solve an identified need, or to confirm that is a need, and then to find a way to give them that solution as quick as possible. And that would be not a lot of times you hear things like a painkiller, but we're not looking for painkiller, because painkiller doesn't get rid of the underlying issue, right? We're trying to find solutions to help people, perform better and live a better life. And then the other one would be that we have things made for certain solutions. So if you're doing communication, it may be something like dealing with the global entity, like global vision. There's so many global issues, especially in America, right? It's so multicultural.
Oh, yeah.
Even in your own company, you've got a lot of challenges dealing with people that might be thinking of something from a different thing. It can be very positive, but sometimes, if we're negotiating, we might have different styles or this type of thing. There's, for a lot of the Asian companies, we have overseas selling, right? Showing them how to get in the North American market. What is the psychology between selling? Business email.
Right.
So a number of these kind of specific applications which can be used immediately and make you more productive. It's all based on productivity, right? Making anything you take should make your life more productive from the moment you leave that training session.
Right. And when they come in and they, where can they reach you?
Yeah, okay, great. So if on the website, so it's silicon-edge.com, and then you'll see there's a contact form and our phone number. So people come in there. Then a lot of other ones, too, come from referrals, right? You'll have someone will mention they used a class, and then that will get referred over. And I should mention, too, within the class there's two types. Primarily, we do a lot of on-site training, and that's just for companies. It's difficult for executives to maybe get out and go to the next town over or an outside place. They might do a 5-hour session, but in some cases, obviously, there has to be a minimum number of people. So in some cases, you might have a smaller organization. They can do what we call our open or public courses, where we have on-site. You can come from different companies, right? So there's pros and cons to both. One of the nice things about, I think, the open courses are you get to interact with people from different industries and companies. So there's a lot of learning from other students in the class as well. So that's kind of a positive, I think, advantage as well.
Definitely. Now, okay, so I'm on your site, right? I see psychological jujutsu. I mean, just, what is that? That's
so
basically,
cool. So basically, as I mentioned just briefly, when I was watching that UFC, I guess it was the second one back in 1994, I was just thinking, by then I was socially inept and I was old thumbs, but I was thinking, what if there was a way to kind of persuade or do that same type of thing with the mind, right, with people? How can you, I mean, there's got to be a turnkey way. And then over time, I began to look and research and test, and this came down to basically what I call a complete supercharged, results-driven communication system. What that means is it has everything you need to understand how people think. Like, for instance, it doesn't matter what someone thinks. All you need to know is how they think, right? If you can understand how they process information, then you'll understand. And by that I mean they may say they don't like chicken and steak, but if you find out, for instance, maybe they're a vegan, then they're probably not going to like fish either, right? Because we know that their thinking is not about chicken or fish, but it's a broader piece. So these types of things are there. And then the idea is that it encompasses this influence, persuasion, negotiating. But the overall piece is how can you make things a win-win, maintain what you say in Japan, the wa, or the harmony, but also strengthen a relationship, right? But also by minimizing emotional turmoil, making yourself a little bit more psychologically resilient or agile. So basically making a better life for yourself and those around you. And, you know, an example might be, I would say, even applying it to a child. What do I mean by a win-win? Well, if your child doesn't want to go to the elementary school, we all know they need to go to the school, but how could you entice them or get them to go, right? It's a win-win for them to go, right? So those are very important influencing pieces that can, you know, can really zap a parent's strength. So this is applicable in all walks of life, from business to you know, marital relationships, to the parent-child as well. But it had to be something that didn't take decades to learn, right? This can be learned very quickly in a matter of a few days. Of course, there's levels, and then it's immediately applicable as well. So all of our training is predicated on this. This is the kind of the foundational or the touchstone of all of the training, is this what we call psychological jujutsu.
I like that, because I like martial arts, so I really do like that. And, you know, beat it all up, you know, kind of take it down and wrestle it down, and you know, it psychologically that's cool, because when you use that, people think of fighting. You have to fight to stay in business. It's not an easy thing, and so when they send people to your company to train them, what can they expect? I mean, how can they, when they go in, what are some of the questions that you would ask the company before you take on their employees?
Yeah, absolutely. So it depends, of course, like where they're focused. There's a huge difference between industries that I found. So of course, banking and finance, just from the nature, is much more, you know, result oriented. You know, return on investment, et cetera. The people are very tuned in. You know, you get in, and again, this is not good or bad, but you get into a lot of the luxury brands. If you're dealing with Coach, that's kind of an anomaly. Well, it's an American company, but that's more of an anomaly for, I think, that industry, that those people are very numbers and, again, results-driven. But if you get into maybe more of the European designs, which is great, you know, there's a work-life balance, but it's a little bit softer. They're not thinking of these pieces. So it's a matter of calibrating this training to those folks. So there may be, in banking, you might be able to skip some of the preliminary work, whereas if you're dealing with more of the creative folk, you might have to use a little bit different modality of teaching and finding out what they need. And then, you know, this is all developed before you go in, and also on the fly, how they respond to a lot of that. But this is all scientific, but there's pieces that will help them accept it and prevent any of these mental blocks where someone may say, come on, right, that doesn't make sense. And again, creative people sometimes feel that this persuasion is slimy, right? There's this idea that I shouldn't get people, you know, if they really like it, they'll just buy it, right? They'll just take it, not realizing that there's a huge amount of cognitive biases that are involved in this, as well as, you know, hidden influence, which will affect things, right? So, you know, the difference of going into a well-lit bakery, right, or having the aroma, right, kind of flowing through the store will have a huge impact on what you choose to buy. It doesn't mean that people buy the best donut or pastry, right? There's other things around it, and you know, they know that when they're doing things like their clothing or whatever, but they might not think about it for their own interaction. That's what's kind of interesting, right? They're not taking it forward. So that's kind of the approach.
Yeah, and you know what? I always tell people, you have to think about yourself in this matter because you're no good to no one else if you can't take care of yourself first.
That's right. Absolutely.
I love going on people's websites, and I always ask, beforehand, give me your links, give me all your stuff. I need to be well, informed when I do the interviews, and I love it because all I have to do is go on your website, which is silicon-edge.com, and I go there and I can see everything. I mean, there's nothing that you have left to the imagination as far as what you're advertising, which is perfect. It's great. Do you have a book? When people come to you and they say, "Oh, I want this to happen," can I buy your program and not your services per se, but just a book? Do you have books available to the public?
Yeah. So what we're doing right now is all the training we've done right now is, I mean, there's a manual, right? So they receive that as we do the training. But currently, that training is there's a live instructor, to add other information and guide it to the training. One of the things we're working on for this year is to have the standalone book that people can download. So that will include the ebook and also videos to add in a lot of these. There's nuances and things as well. So that's something we're doing. But right now, it's all based on either the live or the webinar type training. But that's something we will add as well. But right now, all of the training is a delivered format, right? But it'll soon be self-directed and self-paced. That will be another option as well.
Awesome. That's important because some people don't want or don't have the time to actually do the classes, but they can sit and read a book, while they're at lunch and doing different things, so the books will be available to them.
Especially for a lot of executives too, right? Now they're traveling, right? It's hard sometimes to get even a day or two for a class, so that's what's nice about the, self-paced, take it when you want, self-directed. You can also skip around or go back, whereas in the classroom setting, as much as you try to be flexible, we're always trying to be cognizant of someone not going too fast ahead or holding the class back. So that's one of the nice things too, right? You have a lot more freedom with that, with the online learning as well.
Well, we're going to have a second half to this show, so if you're listening in on the show, you can reach James here at SiliconEdge, and that's going to be silicon-edge.com. You can contact them, and I am sure you're going to be very pleased with whatever you decide to take. They have a lot of different competitive things for you to take: high-impact training, executive coaching and consulting. I mean, psychological jujutsu is like on the top of the list. I'm telling you that is like something I've never heard, and I love it. If you have something, I do. And then also, you have to really look at the programming for the children. I mean, if you want your child to be, on top of her or his game, James has Lego Life Lessons for Kids. You have to look at that because we're all about the next generation. And if we keep repeating, the things that we're doing, we're going to continue to get the same results. I mean, James, we have a second half of the show, and I am excited about that second half. But on this first half, can we wrap up what we've done here with this one?
Sure.
With SiliconEdge's Jujutsu, the Jujutsu training, the psychological Jujutsu, the Lego Life Lessons, and all that. When a person comes to you and they ask you for these things, how can they prepare themselves before they reach you?
Yeah, sure. So I think understanding what their particular, again, we try to, they can take this as prepackaged and canned, but I would say if they come with particular needs, then we can help tailor that to solve problems, right? Because we want the highest return on learning or return on investment that we can. We want them to be satisfied and tell others and come back. So if they can think of, there might be sticking points or challenges for the organization, maybe it's overseas selling, increasing employee engagement, or this innovation, et cetera, then we can gather some more information and really make sure that we, one, use examples that are more relevant to them, right? So, for instance, I wouldn't probably use examples for the oil or energy industry with Gucci, right? We'd want something a little bit more, within their thing. So all of those would be very helpful. And, of course, understanding who would be attending, right? Senior executives, mid-level people, new hires, et cetera. All those are very, very important for us to know so that we can give them the best service possible. Because we want them to be successful.
Definitely. All right, so we're getting ready to take a break in a couple of minutes. I want you to actually go to his website. You have to, because he has so much information there and so many different things that you guys can benefit from. Also on the bottom, you can leave a comment and send him a message if you like. I'm sure that James will be very, very more than happy to answer any questions you may have. And
sure.
I am looking at different things here that we're going to talk about in the second half of the show. But I have to ask you, being a person in the business and being who you are, and I can see that you're very dedicated again for, everything. When you get someone that's not ready, what would you advise them?
For the training, to take the training, you mean? Or
Yeah.
So I would say,
if they're just not ready.
Yeah. Well, sometimes there's people that aren't ready that shouldn't take it, right? They're just not, they're not willing to accept it. But I think for most people, they actually enjoy honesty, right? Real authenticity, not a fake plastic smile. But when you explain to them, this idea of kind of moving the ego to the side, just open yourself up, let's just take it as it is, oftentimes they become the biggest fan because for them it's earth-shattering of these transformations as well. But there are some people where it just doesn't make sense. Maybe the company's forcing them as kind of a checklist training, and they could still do it if they had to do it. But there's probably people that shouldn't be there, right? And of course, you wouldn't really want them in class if they're going to be more of a wet blanket as well. But those are very rare. Those are kind of the outliers. But I think most people, even if they may be skeptical, they're definitely open with by helping them in, and also demo. Right? We do a lot of demos as well, where people can when we go into the places as well, where you can kind of prove what you can do in just a few minutes within meeting them, so they can see what would happen during a whole 1 or 2 days together.
I do suggest that. I mean, wouldn't that be better if they did the demo?
I think
so they would know what to expect.
I think so. I think it's really good. It also depends on HR, right? Again, sometimes, again, not every time, but at end of quarters, they may be just interested in it's that use it or lose it budget. These types of things happen. It's probably not the training they want, but for the people who are looking for that, again, we're always looking at results and how to make things better and more productive. I think those are the people who are going to be best served by this training, right? It's like an automobile. I mean, there's Nissans and Hyundais, and those are good daily drivers. This is perhaps more like a Mercedes or I wouldn't say an Aston Martin, but somewhere like that. It's going to be a little bit more focused, and you're going to have, I think, some very good results, but it's probably not for everyone.
Right. Well, definitely. It has been a pleasure on this half of the show to have James from SiliconEdge here on the show. We're going to take a short break and be right back in a half an hour. But if you have any questions for him, you can reach him at Silicon, that's SILICON-EDGE edge.com. Go on the site, look it over. I'm telling you, if you have a company and you need your employees or you need training, please go. I mean, the more you invest in yourself, the better you become. So you want to invest in yourself, definitely. James, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back here at Dream Chasers Radio. And I can't wait to hear the second half of this show. It's going to be as good as the first, I'm telling you.
Looking forward to it. Great.
Definitely. So we're taking a short break, and we'll be right back here at Dream Chasers Radio. Don't you go nowhere. And I am your host, Yaya, and we'll be singing this, Dare to Be Different, until the day we go out. I did